I think we're about to reach the 100 billion AUM mark. It's reasonably large
decent.
Global asset manager, yeah. And we have, I think, a bit more than 300 employees right now. So it's reasonably sized asset manager. Yeah, so I think there's going to be kind of a separation of worlds there. I think most people are going to have end up two wallets. One wallet being KYC and the other wallet being non-KYC, which is more for the DeFi that we know now. And then people will have a KYC wallet for things that require KYC, because the regulators are not going to allow people to hold securities without being KYC'd. I can tell you that already. That's not going to happen. I have a feeling that there are a lot of parties on the sideline waiting for MiCA regulation to kick in, even though it might not even directly affect them or affect the way that they offer products to clients. From what I heard is that the SEC did make it very clear that they didn't actually want to approve the products, but they kind of had no choice. They were kind of cornered into the approval. My personal perspective is that the chances of approval are 50-50. We haven't seen the same amount of meetings that we had before the Bitcoin ETF with the SEC as for the Ethereum ETF. So
hello à tous l'équipe, j'espère que vous allez bien. Aujourd'hui, on se retrouve pour une nouvelle interview. Cette fois-ci, j'ai le plaisir de recevoir Menno de VanEck. C'est tout simplement le spécialiste crypto de VanEck Europe, et il s'occupe aussi de gérer les produits crypto de VanEck Europe. Donc, je pense que ça va être très, très intéressant. Pour information, VanEck a eu un ETF Bitcoin Spot approuvé, donc très bien positionné pour comprendre quels sont les produits à venir en termes de crypto, quelles vont être les nouveautés, comment les ETF vont évoluer, et tout simplement qu'est-ce que le futur nous réserve. On va tout de suite pouvoir commencer. Hello Menno, how is it going?
Hi Leonard, how are you? I'm doing good.
I'm in Dubai in my hotel room. I hope the internet connection will be fine. We had a lot of rain, so I wasn't really expecting that from Dubai, but I'll take it. So yeah,
it's artificial rain, right?
I'm not sure it's artificial rain. It looked like a storm. So I couldn't see anything from my hotel room. So basically, I think it's not artificial at all. But we'll see. So where are you based?
I'm based out of Lisbon. Moved here last year, and mostly because it's it's regarded as such a crypto hub of Europe, and definitely showed the past year. There's tons of events, communities, ecosystems of crypto projects, startups, etc. I love it. I love it here.
I've been to Solana Breakpoint in Lisbon and also NFC Lisbon, but the last time I went, it was for the Pico Top of 2021 cycle, and then it was for for the bankruptcy of FTX. It wasn't very good memories, but still very a good place to visit. I really wanted to have you for this podcast, to present a bit what VanEck is and what you are working on crypto-wise. I do believe that we had a lot of information in the French-speaking community, but it's always very interesting, in my opinion, to have insights of what's happening behind the scenes, or be able to discuss BTF, the different products, what's happening also when it comes to Ethereum, ETFs and everything. But maybe before talking about that, maybe could you introduce yourself and especially what you did before VanEck, because I believe you have a very interesting background. I noticed that you were working on CBDCs at the time. So feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Leonard. So my name is Menno Martens. Currently working as a Crypto Specialist product manager for the crypto ETFs in VanEck Europe. And before that, I worked at the Dutch Central Bank, it's kind of funny when I tell this, because it's the complete opposite of working directly in crypto. But also in the central bank, I was working on crypto. I ended up there first being part of what they call internally the innovation lab, where I was just graduation intern, kind of working on my project, which was regarding CBDC. I was trying to set up a model for myself to understand better how such a CBDC could be adopted within an economy. And this is how I ended up there, also working on crypto, and later on also a bit on the digital euro. and it was mostly regarding educational aspects. So trying to educate people within the central bank about the technology and the risks, other considerations they need to take into account when creating like new policies around crypto, and generally how to go about this new technology. And even if there's possibilities for the central bank themselves to use like crypto, and one way they found out that they could use crypto was for the digital euro. It was one of the let's say one of the early scenarios for the digital euro was based on the blockchain, and actually still a lot of initiatives, not from the central bank, but more from like research institutions, universities. They're still working on versions of a digital euro using blockchain. But the central bank kind of very quickly found out that decentralizing something that they want to have centralized control over is not the best way to go forward. So they opted to go for a more, let's say, centralized approach. And I kind of had my doubts about this, and generally about the way that people thought about crypto within the central bank, and they think that way for obvious reasons. They for example didn't really like Bitcoin or Ethereum that much, because it does pose quite a big risk from their point of view for like the economic stability in Europe. If such a like coin actually gets massively adopted, which is like probably their worst fear. Yeah, so this is kind of how I ended up switching and trying to get more into like within really the crypto world, because I was myself already, well, I would consider myself like crypto native, because I was in crypto since 2015. Mostly, I started out investing a little bit, and then I started out playing around a bit with smart contracts and like testing out new projects all the time. And you get deeper and deeper into the world there. So that's how I found VanEck, and it's kind of funny because VanEck it's a very traditional asset manager, like family owned asset manager.
How big is it?
It's I think we're about to reach the 100 billion AUM mark. So it's reasonably like
It's
large
decent.
global asset manager, yeah. And we have I think a bit more than 300 employees right now. So it's reasonably sized asset manager. And it was interesting to find out that such a player was so deeply involved in crypto, kind of got into crypto at the same time as I did. In 2016, VanEck started offering like educational content around Bitcoin and blockchain. And that was just a starting point. I think education is always a starting point for anything. And they got more and more into it, like filing for a spot Bitcoin ETF, future space ETF, later also for Ethereum. And then they acquired a company in Amsterdam, Think ETFs, where they were also quite well interested in crypto and doing products on crypto. And this is how we eventually got to the crypto ETNs that we have now in Europe. Which, yeah, I mean, I think I really do believe like this is a very, very accessible and convenient way for like the non-tech savvy, crypto savvy people to also have some exposure to this industry. And yeah, for some of us, it's like very easy to think about like storing passwords and private keys, but for most people, it's not like that.
Cette vidéo vous est présentée en partenariat avec dYdX. dYdX est LA solution décentralisée qui vous permet de trader les principales crypto-monnaies de manière liquide sur mobile et ordinateur. Contrairement à la majorité des exchanges, vous n'avez pas besoin de vous KYC et vous récupérez la majorité des frais que vous payez. Plus de 60 000 personnes utilisent déjà dYdX et j'en fais partie, alors qu'attendez-vous? Scannez le QR code sur votre écran ou utilisez le lien dans la description pour créer votre compte avec un simple wallet et profitez de 5% de réduction sur vos frais. Allez, on repart sur l'interview.
Like, in your opinion, what motivated like VanEck to participate into the crypto space? Like, because I believe that at the time they were like starting to be involved in crypto, like it wasn't like a very easy position to have, like being like the TradFi guy, a TradFi group, like starting to get involved in getting interest in into crypto. So yeah, do you have any insight of that?
Yeah, I think a lot of the times, whenever we offered to look into crypto with clients or with anyone else, usually the answer is no. We're not really interested in crypto right now. Maybe come back later. And slowly over time, we see that sentiment change as we go through the market cycles, and
especially now.
Yeah. I mean, it might sound obvious, but especially during when prices increase, people tend to change the way they think about crypto, which is fair enough. So even now, there's still a lot of European cultures where crypto is not regarded as part of being like a balanced portfolio, and that's always something that we've like advocated for, to see it as part of a balanced portfolio. It's like diversification into a new asset class, new technology that potentially competes with things that you already have in your portfolio, maybe things like Nasdaq or S&P 500, whatever you have, or even gold. Some people regard Bitcoin as like a digital version of gold. Why wouldn't you at least want to diversify a bit in case that is actually, a narrative that catches on a lot more? Like diversification makes sense. Yeah, exactly. So that's something we really strongly believe in, even if it's just, a few percent. It's worth to at least diversify.
I was wondering, what is your day-to-day work? Like what are your personal activities into VanEck? Is it fully related to the ETF? Is it related to the upcoming products that you're developing? What's your main focus now and day-to-day work?
Yeah, so I would say it's 50% maintaining the existing products that we already have in Europe. So I'm only working on the European products, not on the US ETF products. And then the other 50% is researching new products, doing stuff with tokenization, for example. That's something that really deeply interests us, because we think that our role as an asset manager is it's going to change a lot, in the next, well, maybe not in the next few years, but 5-10 years. Adoption goes a lot slower than most people predict. But we do think we're going to have to adapt to, let's say, new way of doing financial products. So we're trying to explore different routes. So, for example, one of my colleagues from the US, Matthew Bartlett, he created this platform segment, which is NFT fractionalization, and you can do a lot of things, a lot of cool things with this platform. And that's just one way we're doing things. We're also looking into stuff like tokenized ETFs, tokenized securities, all kinds of things. But for example, recently we also we added a staking feature to our Ethereum product. So now investors of our Ethereum ETN can also receive staking rewards, even though they're not always guaranteed. But we are really happy that we can offer things like this. It does take work to implement it, and mostly on the educational aspect, because since last year, since 2 years ago, the sentiment towards staking and generally anything that has yield, traditional investors are super scared of it because they think somehow it's related to FTX or Luna or whatever
it is.
It is
the most related or comparable to their own ecosystem with dividends and those kind of things, right? I don't know, or at least I don't know, usually they tend to invest in some things that generate revenues or accrue the value of the assets they hold. So doesn't make a lot of sense to be scared, since it look a bit more like TradFi, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the way how we try to draw a comparison. Receiving staking rewards is nothing more than sort of receiving part of the revenue that Ethereum creates by offering the service of making transactions happen, right?
Yeah.
So this is the way we explain it. And if you really show where this yield comes from, and that it's like a true, like it's real, like it's a fungible thing, it's not something that's just printed and given to you and inflates the circulating supply forever. So this is something that the traditional investors really liked. And we noticed that the sentiments towards staking really changed because of that. They also like that, for example, Ethereum changed to proof of stake because of the reduction in energy consumption. That's something that a lot of people still consider to be important, especially traditional investors. They think that maybe ESG is important.
Yeah.
In that case,
this is not even a topic in our space now. That is crazy.
Yeah, it's not really like for crypto people, it's not such a big topic, but actually for the professional investors out there, it is quite a big topic. Yeah.
You mentioned that you were working on tokenizing ETFs, securities, and other types of assets, products, whatever. Is it something that is about to be released, about to be exchangeable, or is it something that we'll see in I don't know, in 5-10 years? Are we about to see it, or is it still in a long time?
I wish I could say that we're about to see it, but the reality is that there's still a lot of unknowns, especially when it comes to regulation. We just don't know yet precisely how a regulator would treat a product, a tokenized ETF like that. So we're let's say in kind of the discovery phase, talking to regulators, service providers, to try and get a better view of which route we should take. But kind of the end vision is that it would be really cool that you hold a tokenized ETF in your own hardware wallet, right? That is the end vision for us. And you could even think further that instead of tokenizing just the ETF, you have also tokenized securities, which can be part of a basket in your wallet or something. There's all kinds of new things you can do, and then also thinking about dividends and dividend payments. The whole system could be made in such a optimized and efficient, cost-efficient way that it actually does compete a lot with the way that we things do now, with a lot of intermediaries that also require their share of, let's say, payments and yeah.
Do you think the DeFi will end up being KYC'd in a way, or is it far from happening? Because you mentioned, the end goal is to have I don't know, tokenized S&P 500 in your ledger. So I mean, you would need to have a KYC and register yourself for owning these assets, or not at all? What are your views on that based on your latest conversations with regulators?
Yeah, so I think there's going to be kind of a separation of worlds there. I think most people are going to end up having two wallets, one wallet being KYC'd and the other wallet being non-KYC'd, which is more for the DeFi that we know now. And then people will have a KYC wallet for things that require KYC, because the regulators are not going to allow people to hold securities without being KYC'd. I can tell you that already. That's not going to happen. But it's kind of comparable to now. You have a bank account, right? And your bank knows your identity, but you also have a wallet with cash and I don't know, coins. And this is non-KYC, right? So it's kind of similar in a way.
You mentioned that you were working for VanEck Europe. Is your work very different from the similar department at VanEck US? Are you working guys on the same topics, or is it a completely different approach to the different topics and problems that are going on?
So on the broader topics tokenization, staking, maybe research as well. We do a lot of research and writing articles on our website. We work together a lot on these topics. But when it comes to products, well, usually the products are so specific for a jurisdiction or region that it doesn't really make sense. We can share updates among each other just to keep each other up to date with what's going on. but I'm usually not at all involved into like the things that they're doing for the spot ETFs or other things that they might be working on there.
And I do believe that you have like kind of like different standards when it comes to ETF. I heard that in Europe we have like ETN, ETP, ETF with standards like UCITS. Like from like a crypto guy perspective, this is very hard to understand. So could you maybe understand like what are the different approaches and the main differences between like the US market and the European markets?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll give a brief overview. So there's a lot of confusion in the market because some of our competitors, they may be marketing it as an ETP or sometimes even as an ETF. But kind of ETP is like the umbrella term. It's just exchange traded product. It's very general. And then under ETP, you have ETFs, exchange traded funds. You have ETNs, exchange traded notes, which are debt instruments. And you have ETCs, which are exchange traded commodities. So most products in Europe, they're ETNs, they are debt instruments. And every euro that's invested into that debt instrument, at least for VanEck, is invested into crypto. So it's 1-to-1 backed. It's 100% crypto underlying in cold storage. And this is kind of the way that most crypto products in Europe work. That's because we can't have ETFs as we know them in Europe, or in the US, because in Europe we have two things that stop us from creating like the ETF. One is that cryptos are not kind of allowed eligible assets to be part of an ETF product, and the other reason is that you can't have an ETF with full exposure to Bitcoin. The maximum weight that one component can have is 20%. So like even if like Bitcoin would be an eligible asset, you still wouldn't have a full Bitcoin ETF. You could at most maybe create a basket of cryptos, right? So there's those two things. Yeah, it's tragic. But we have ETNs, which are under the hood. They work like exactly the same as ETFs. It's just that kind of there are some legal details which are different, like the ownership of the underlying. But we do, for example, offer people the right to redeem the underlying cryptos. But then they have to like fill in the form, and once accepted, we can actually send them the physical crypto coins to their wallet.
This is great. Like it's not something like the US ETF offers, right?
Yeah,
or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
I don't think it's possible. Yeah, it's only something that's for Europe. Yeah.
And so, like you mentioned that the ETNs are different, like from the ETF, because like it has like different standards, and that like the ETNs could have like full exposure to one asset, but it's not like 100% regulated, I would say. Like, do you think that the distribution of ETNs will be improved like one day? Because like I do believe this is like kind of like the war that is like behind the scene, is that like the ETNs are great. They are kind of like similar to US ETF, but they can't be used or I would say broadly used by firms, by I don't know, like insurance funds or those kind of things. Or maybe I'm wrong, but I do believe that that's maybe why we don't have like major inflows coming from Europe. So could we expect like huge inflows from Europe? And if yes, like what would be the condition to those kind of inflows technically?
Yeah, it's true that in Europe, I would say most of our inflows, they come from retail investors. It's actually since the launch of the spot Bitcoin ETF in the US that a number of large institutions, like a couple of the largest banks in Europe, reached out to us with the interest of being involved with the crypto ETNs. And it's really interesting that I always say that like the spot Bitcoin ETFs are such a kind of pivotal moment for the adoption of crypto as part of like the institutional portfolio. And it's true, like that's actually how it works. And it's mostly, I would say, the compliance teams within those institutions holding back crypto. Usually the business sides of side of things understands the need. Definitely, if they have the demand from clients, like why not offer these products? But it's actually mostly just concerns for compliance. And I have a feeling that there are a lot of parties on the sideline waiting for MiCA regulation to kick in, even though it might not even directly affect them or affect the way that they offer products to clients. They just like to know that there are frameworks in place that it's now it's okay to do it. So I think we'll see a lot of action this year.
Yeah, I hope the price will be way higher when MiCA happens, so they can follow back and...
Avant de poursuivre cette vidéo, je t'invite tout simplement à rejoindre mon Discord dans lequel tu peux retrouver plus de 10 000 traders actifs. Dans ce Discord, on parle de nombreuses choses, notamment on va tout simplement partager nos analyses, nos graphiques, sur quoi on spécule, les différents airdrops qu'on farm, les news en temps réel qui sont partagées par exemple sur Twitter ou sur différents sites. Enfin bref, c'est vraiment un moyen d'être à jour sur ce qui se passe dans l'écosystème. Et en plus de ça, sur ce Discord-là, je vais partager tout simplement pas mal de données et pas mal de choses que je surveille personnellement, donc des données qui sont importantes à mes yeux et tout simplement moi personnellement ce que je surveille au quotidien. Donc ça permet vraiment d'avoir un suivi en temps réel de moi ce que je regarde et comment je me positionne dans l'écosystème. D'ailleurs, tu peux retrouver mes performances de 2022 et 2023 sur tous les trades que j'ai partagés gratuitement et publiquement. Donc ici, tu as absolument tout le détail avec les positions disponibles de manière transparente, mes positions actives, mon folio, ainsi que tous les trades que personnellement je prends de mon côté avec le suivi de comment je déplace mon stop loss, comment j'ajuste mon risque, comment je me positionne, etc. J'espère que ça vous plaira. Tout est gratuit. Je vous invite à rejoindre. Tout sera en description, en commentaire épinglé. Et maintenant, place à la vidéo.
Do you have any insights about like what were the conversations with the SEC? Because I do believe that you're working for VanEck Europe, which is kind of different from VanEck US, but maybe you got like conversations or feedback from the US teams about their conversation with the SEC. So what happened? Like what were the processes like? And maybe is there anything we don't know that is kind of like interesting to mention before the approval?
I think before the spot Bitcoin approval, there were a lot of meetings with the SEC where I wasn't involved in this, but it was mostly regarding the details of how it was going to be set up. So things like one thing that was considered is to enable in-kind creations. It's when one of the authorized participants actually sends physical Bitcoin to the ETF issuer, and ETF issuer issues the ETF shares to the authorized participant. But this is something that the SEC really didn't want to have at first. So it's that's, for example, part of the conversation. And then from what I heard is that the SEC did make it very clear that they didn't actually want to approve the products, but they kind of had no choice. They were kind of cornered into the approval, mostly regarding Grayscale. Again, I don't know the details, but this is kind of, from what I understood, how it went.
But it makes no sense for them to say we don't want to prove it. Like they don't have to have like any strong opinion. They have to like analyze what's going on, and if it's rational, and if it respects the limits and conditions that they made and they created, and then like prove or not. Like this is weird to say like, hey guys, we don't want to approve, but we are forced to look at it. So then we'll look at it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a bit strange. Like you expect them to remain objective towards a product and not think about choosing a side to be against or to be in favor of crypto. But I mean, we do see that certain, let's say, members of the SEC are not really in favor of crypto.
Did you heard any things related to like the Ethereum ETF, like in the US about that? Like, is it kind of like the same observations, the same feedback from the SEC? Or are the things different? And do you have any opinions about like the probability of like having like Ethereum like ETF? I know this is like a tricky question for you, but maybe you have like a personal perspective on this.
Yeah, I mean, my personal perspective is that the chances of approval are like 50-50. The reality is we just don't know.
For May? For May or for like when they're on?
I think for the long-term horizon, it's a 50-50 chance. I don't know if it's going to be approved.
It's not that good.
Well, I don't know if that's good or bad. Like, I mean, I hope to think that it will be approved, of course. But the thing is that we haven't seen the same amount of meetings that we had before the Bitcoin ETF with the SEC as for the Ethereum ETF. So it could take longer. We might also be surprised that suddenly things start moving. So I mean, I have my fingers crossed that it will be approved, but it might also not be, or could take a lot longer. So it's like all scenarios are still wide open. But all we can do is like try to educate and try to spread the message. Continue offering our products in Europe, which are already available. So, yeah.
Do you already offer like Ethereum, like ETNs, like in Europe?
Yeah. We have right now 12 products in Europe. So we have the regular ones, Bitcoin, Ethereum. The Ethereum ETN is now with staking. So the staking rewards are included in the product.
Dogecoin?
And we also have, we don't have Dogecoin. So things we
Not
don't
yet.
we don't really do meme coins for specific reasons. But you know, who knows? Maybe at some point we do need to take them more serious. We have 2 basket products, which I think are really great. So it's like crypto leaders and smart contract leaders. Then you have like within one product, you have exposure to, let's say, the broader category of the market, whether that's smart contract platforms or just top 10 by market cap. Like these are really useful products for investors to have.
And do you have like a decent traction on those products, or is it still very early? Like and if it's still kind of like low, like how would you expect it to grow? Like what would be the conditions to like make a boom, like for like a Europe? Like in your opinion, like will it happen like anytime soon, or like all the European will still be waiting for like the US to be okay with it?
Yeah, it seems as if kind of the US is leading demand in this case. We have seen a lot of traction in our products, and we're really happy about that. Even though we mostly remained at the same market share, but kind of the overall pie for all players in Europe it's growing. So the overall demand for crypto is still growing, and I still think we have a lot of opportunity of growth in countries where crypto or investing in general is not yet considered to be such a important thing. So I know, for example, France, investing is like not an easy topic. I think even like ETFs are not always available everywhere. Countries like Finland, for example, we recently did a talk there at CFA Society, which had their first crypto event since ever. So it's like things are starting to move along with like the interest that we see coming from the US. And I think with like regulation coming in July, things are looking promising. I would say there's a lot of possibilities for growth this year, next year, and the years ahead.
You mentioned that like your kind of like average client is mostly like retail. I would say like small professional investors, probably. Like, is it very different in the US? And do you think that the types of clients you have and owning your like crypto ETNs will change? Like, so like in your opinion, will we see more and more like huge funds investing in Bitcoin ETF ETNs or like crypto ETNs, or like it's like far from happening? Because like this is where the big money here it is, and this is what's very interesting. And I'm still shocked, to be honest, that we've seen like major inflows like in Bitcoin US ETFs, but still no large like firms and companies in investing. Or like could you correct me if I'm wrong about this? Like just understanding
So I guess
the typology of clients.
Yeah, I guess you're talking about institutions like pension funds and things like that, right? Like the really big players. Yeah, they're usually a lot more conservative in what they invest in. But again, it's the same story. If you we try to be in conversations with as many as we can about portfolio diversification benefits. The quite significant risk-adjusted returns of crypto. So we do try to keep educating on this front, and that's, I think, as much as we can do. If we keep pushing our products to parties like this, I think they'll also kind of distance themselves more from it, and they tend to stay away from things where there's a lot of hype, because hype usually comes with a lot of volatility, and that's usually not too good for someone like a pension fund. I think, pension funds and parties like this, we'll see more interest coming from them. Hopefully this year, but truth is, it could take much longer for that to happen. I'm not sure if it's going to happen this cycle. I do hope so, but.
Do you believe in a super cycle? Like personally, I know this is like kind of like the topic that is going on in the crypto Twitter. To be honest, on my end, I do not strongly believe in it until I will see it, because I do believe that this story often rhymes and often repeats itself. So personally, I don't strongly believe in it. I would. If I had to believe in it, it would be mostly on Bitcoin and not on the other stuff. But what is your personal opinion? Maybe you have more educated thoughts on this, since you're very well positioned and yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think the whole idea about the super cycle, it comes from the changing in the market dynamics and the change in let's say, who is invested in crypto. So in previous market cycles, we've seen mostly smaller retail investors being involved, who also tend to be more emotional in decision making. And that's why probably one of the reasons why we've seen such significant volatility in crypto. It's because things just move incredibly fast. It's 24/7. Instant, and people are, just trading a lot. But this whole kind of the demographics of the crypto investors, it's changing with the spot Bitcoin ETF, but also our crypto ETNs. The investors behind those products, they're usually not they're not the typical retail investor. They're not the type of investor who radically makes decisions to buy into a hype or sell into a dump. Sorry?
Are they diamond ends?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I do hope they have diamond hands, which will come in handy at some point. But most of those products, they're recommended to be held for at least a year, some longer. So this is why I think, as these kind of products grow and institutional demand takes over a larger part of the total demand for crypto, we'll see the market, I think, move. It could still be volatile, but kind of this whole idea of the super cycle is that things take a lot longer to be adopted, and there's a lot of institutions waiting to adopt crypto, or they're already in crypto and they're about to scale up. And that takes a lot longer than for retail investors to just get into crypto.
So you believe that we'll not see any outflow from the US ETF for a year or two, since it's very recent, and the big ones that are positioning themselves into these ETFs are not about to withdraw those funds anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it could go both ways. I think overall there could, on the long term, a net inflow. I mean, outflows are always possible, especially during if there's a market crash or bear market. you can see a lot of outflows.
Wow.
The thing that gives me a lot of kind of confidence in this is because we with our crypto ETNs went through a bear market, and we've seen the kind of outflows. And actually, it was quite. We were positively surprised by it that most investors behind our crypto ETNs seem to have diamond hands. So that's a really great thing. We actually didn't see that many outflows. The overall demand for crypto ETNs has remained mostly the same. Of course, we didn't see the kind of inflows we see during a bull market, but at least we didn't see the outflows that kind of you would expect to see.
Would you say that like the average investor, like in US ETF or EU like ETNs, like crypto ETNs, are like very smart? Like are they like way smarter than us? Are they, I don't know, are they the smart money? Because like I don't think people like always say like, oh, okay, this is big boys, they have like huge amount of money, or they are like professionals, so they are smarter than us. But is it like the case, like in average? Like, do you have any insights on that, or have you seen like very weird positioning or very weird trading from some of them on cryptos?
I mean, for some of them, that might be something that's true, especially the early adopters of these products. You may consider them as like smart money moving in. In hindsight, that could be a different scenario, of course. Same as we see just directly with direct investments in crypto. Yeah, it's actually an interesting question. I would just consider them to have a different approach to investing. They follow either professional guidelines or kind of targets, thresholds with what they should have exposure to. So it's a different type of investing. But in general, I would consider them definitely to be part of the smart money.
Cette vidéo vous est présentée en partenariat avec dYdX. dYdX est LA solution décentralisée qui vous permet de trader les principales crypto-monnaies de manière liquide sur mobile et ordinateur. Contrairement à la majorité des exchanges, vous n'avez pas besoin de vous KYC et vous récupérez la majorité des frais que vous payez. Plus de 60 000 personnes utilisent déjà dYdX et j'en fais partie, alors qu'attendez-vous? Scannez le QR code sur votre écran ou utilisez le lien dans la description pour créer votre compte avec un simple wallet et profitez de 5% de réduction sur vos frais. Allez, on repart sur l'interview.
Have you been surprised by like the traction and the popularity of some of your products? So I don't know, like I don't know, like for example, the volumes of your ATMs, of the AUM exactly and everything, but like, have you been surprised? Like, I don't know, like the AUM of like Ethereum, like ETN going like above like the Bitcoin ETN AUM, or like some, you know, some very niche products like getting like a huge traction, which is something unexpected. Like, have you seen something that is interesting maybe to understand what are the narratives and what's going on from like the ETN's perspective?
Mm-hmm. Yes, from what we see regarding the interest in our product. So, I mean, Bitcoin is obviously the biggest one. That's where most of our demand goes to. And then Ethereum is second. We have a number of other layer ones, which are actually not getting that much attention yet. But for example, the basket products, they're getting still a lot of attention because they're not as, let's say, as big as we want them to be. Like bigger is always better, I guess. But we do think that alongside Bitcoin and Ethereum, something like a basket is a very convenient product for people, and maybe even in some cases even better than just holding Bitcoin, Ethereum, right? Because if you hold a basket, it can hold Bitcoin, Ethereum, and some of their largest competitors. And if you have exposure to multiple, you can at least ensure that you have exposure to whoever takes over the lead from Ethereum or Bitcoin, if that ever happens. So I think these products I hope to see more traction in that, more adoption. But for now, it's really only Bitcoin and Ethereum getting all the attention.
You mentioned that I mean, like they were like getting more and more exposure to crypto. Like, what is like the average exposure to crypto on your clients? Is it like 1%? Is it 5%? Like, do you have those kind of metrics?
Yeah, we don't know much about their portfolio composition exactly, but what we do kind of, well, wouldn't say recommend, but we always advocate for having like 1 to 3% exposure to crypto, partly because of the diversification benefits in our on our website and other like presentations. We always use this comparison with like portfolio based on 40% bonds and 60% equities, or like the other way around, versus the same kind of portfolio but with 3% exposure to Bitcoin, Ethereum, or crypto leaders. And you can very clearly see the benefits in terms of correlation, in terms of the returns, volatility. So this is kind of what we hope investors are doing, but it's really up to them. Like we can't say much about it, of course.
On your end, I believe that you have like very good knowledge about crypto, and you are probably digging on a daily basis into the Web3 ecosystem. Like, what are the main things that you are focused on and that gets your interest, like your personal interest? Like, what are you personally looking at when it comes to crypto?
Yeah, so there's two trends that I'm personally very interested in, and that's DeFi and tokenized real world assets. Actually,
Not
maybe
AI?
even more tokenized. I would regard AI as being part of DeFi, because AI is kind of, if you talk about things like render or the number of other AI tokens out there, they're mostly physical infrastructure using kind of tokenomics to enable like incentives for either AI machine learning or other AI applications. So I would consider it part of that category. I do think it's a very interesting one because, of course, AI has been gaining rapid adoption with ChatGPT and all the other models available. I think still there's a lot of growth possible for that industry. I don't see everyone using it yet for everything, and I think that's gonna definitely happen. Like if you look at what's possible these days with models like Sora or like video image generation, there's still a lot of things possible. And then tokenized real world assets, I think that's the most interesting one, because here it really comes down to having a more cost efficient infrastructure for like securities, for things that need to trade between parties, because traditional infrastructure has so many unnecessary intermediaries. It's almost surprising to me every time I look at like an overview of how it's currently working.
Just ways to pay fees.
Yeah. And if you look at, for example, in Europe, we have the DLT pilot regime, and that's a regime that allows companies to kind of play around with crypto as a replacement for traditional technologies and intermediaries. And even there, it clearly describes that something like an Ethereum can basically replace the role of a depository, transfer agent, settlement, exchange. Like it's an all-in-one platform. It can do everything, and that is like the promising thing to me. It also connects everyone. Like suddenly you're in a network where you can distribute your product, not just like network wide, but also cross chain, and bridge it and put it in DeFi. So it opens up whole ecosystem suddenly.
So you are like an ETH Maxi.
Not, I would say for now I'm EVM Maxi. So I think the adoption in, let's say, EVM and Ethereum is already so big. I mean, you've seen like things like tokenized funds from BlackRock. They did it on Ethereum, but a lot of service providers, exchanges, for example, etc., large German exchange, they're also working on a digital asset exchange. And they also opt to go for Ethereum or EVM compatible chains because there's just more standards available. Like you see security token standards being developed, basket token standards, things like identity. So this is all very, very cool to see all the puzzle pieces coming together.
So what's the composition of your folio?
My portfolio.
Yeah.
So yeah, just disclaimer, and not financial advice. It's yeah, I would say it's largely the top layer ones. I would say Ethereum holds the biggest position. Next to that comes other layer ones. Bit of exposure to Bitcoin. I take a very diversified approach. I'm not super big on one project. Like I think everything has more or less a very good chance to succeed, possibly. So it's better to hold multiple things, depending on what you believe in.
So you just want to have like an average exposure to the crypto ecosystem and like just bet on the fact that crypto will get bigger and not bet on like a specific success.
Yeah, exactly. There are trends that I believe in more than others, like deep in AI, tokenized real world assets. Generally, layer ones, it's better to have a diversified approach to this than be super big on one layer one, because I don't think it's unrealistic that at some point another layer one gains traction and takes over. Like, it's always a possibility. Everything is a possibility in the end.
Do you have any coins related to deep in or real world assets? Like, and what are those?
Yeah, so the ones that I find really interesting are the ones that manage to actually compete with companies that we know today. So there's one coin, one name the coin, doing mobile networks. I guess you might know which one I'm talking about. Yeah. So this one is really cool because they actually offer already a product and service, and it's working. And I've heard a lot of great feedback from people that are using it, and even has competitive prices. So it's like, wow, this is actually something that uses crypto.
Good alternative. Yeah.
And I think there's a number of other ones that try to abstract away the complexity of crypto and put it like as a backend for like the infrastructure providers instead of the end users. So if you provide infrastructure, you get incentives to provide it through tokens, and kind of the whole complexity of tokens. It's not really a concern for whoever is using that service. So I think these are very promising things, and that's the kind of setup that generally I think might work out the most.
Thank you very much, Menno. I think I took a good amount of time from your day, but I think it has been very insightful, very interesting, and I hope the people who watched will be very happy about it. Maybe to conclude this interview, do you have any smart people in mind I should interview and that might be interesting to interview? Maybe some people that have like a decent spotlight, but probably not enough in your eyes.
I think you should interview Martin Lijnweber. He's one of, well, not direct colleague. He works at Market Factor, which is an index provider. He recently wrote a really good book on investing in crypto and generally how to categorize different crypto projects. Very smart guy. I learned a lot from him. I still learn a lot from what he writes and tells. So this is definitely a recommendation.
Thank you very much. Do you have any last words for the people who watched the entire interview? Maybe a few words about you or VanEck or whatever, or some motivational speech. I don't know. Feel free to say what you want.
Yeah, I think just staying curious about new technologies is the most important, and don't shy away from trying things out. You have to kind of be familiar with what you are invested in. Also, technology-wise, I think it makes a lot of sense to just experience things yourself.
And then you're farming the airdrops, so that is perfect.
I mean, sometimes, yeah.
Thank you very much for your time, Menno, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure. Thank you.